Hi, I'm Terri Broussard Williams, and welcome to Movement Maker TV. It's where we talk about the how, the what, and why we build movements together. And so if you've been watching the series from this season, we've talked about policy, we've talked about philanthropy, and today we're going to talk about how to build a movement. I guess this is the meat of the potatoes and the conversation. And so my guest today is Chas Moore, who's with the Austin Justice Coalition. What I love both about your work, Chas, and you, is that you are becoming this movement on your own. You have grown, and he's shaking his head, he's so modest. But I first heard about Chas about 2 years ago and the work he was doing at the Austin Justice Coalition. But that has evolved, and now people are seeing you as a go-to expert in the criminal justice movement. Tell me a little bit about how you got started and just what it took for you to build that movement, so where you are a trusted authority to do some of the very cool things that you're doing.
Well, I mean, first I just want to thank you for those very kind words. Yeah, you know, I still think it's crazy just to see what we've become as an organization, even me as a person, right? I started out, you know, I was one of the people in the streets. I thought that was the way to get everything done. And it's nothing wrong with it, right? I think we need all different types of pressure points to move the needle forward and to get things done. But for me, with the killing of Trayvon Martin, which was really like, you know, I think my generation's kind of wake-up call to the continuing of the civil rights movement and policy work and things that need to be done. I looked at all the energy we was putting into the streets and the marches and the rallies and the protests. I look at all the hours people would put into like these kind of big production events. And then at the end of the day, you know, when you're trying to measure what was gained or what was, you know, what did we successfully accomplish, it was really nothing. You know, so for me, somebody that actually wanted to see a decrease or decline in, you know, black bodies being shot by officers, wanted to see a decrease in black bodies going to jail for, you know, low-level possession or just, you know, Class C arrests and stuff like that. To, you know, we as an organization and me as an individual, we had to shift the focus, right? Like, you couldn't change policy if you're only in the street. You couldn't change legislation if you're only in the street. You actually had to get in the fine print, the black and white. You had to sit down with the powers that be and start having, you know, the much needed and sometimes difficult conversations, so you can actually see the change that we're holding up posters and you know, shouting and all the chants, like, you know, everything that we're doing the action work for. You just had to, you have to translate that over to policy, something that is sustainable, something that can affect lives for, you know, something outside of that moment, which is, you know, that rally, that protest, somewhere where we come and just, you know, expound our feelings and emotions. You have to build something that can last for, you know, hopefully decades and centuries.
And so let's stop there, because what you just said was a whole lot, but it really was a teachable moment. Many times when people are building movements, they're not thinking about that true policy continuum, the start to the finish. Right? So, you know, you talk about doing work in the streets. That really translates to having rallies, having people marching, holding signs. That's just one tactic in the policy continuum as you're building a movement. But to truly have that systemic change, like you mentioned, you really do have to get into the policy work. You have to pass laws, such as legislation, local ordinances, or even maybe executive orders, because we've seen some of those lately, especially in the criminal justice space at the federal level. Those things, it's what kind of puts the work in stone, you know? So share a little bit about how you create the movement itself. So how do you find people to help you, the people that are your allies and march along the side of you, and maybe a different group of people that might walk the halls of the Capitol with you?
Well, you know, again, I started out as one of like the people on the outside that just wanted to burn everything down. And honestly, when I started the Austin Justice Coalition, not too many people know this, I wanted it to be like this all-black, kind of like new Black Panther-esque party movement. But then I realized I stay in Austin, right? It's not that many black people to do something like that. So, you know, I realized, you know, if we're talking about criminal justice reform, if we're talking about dealing with equity and racism, that's something that affects all of us, right? So, you know, first we have to build a space that everybody feels comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? So, You know, I love all the white people that make my organization happen because they know one of our principles is like we all have to be uncomfortable dealing with these things that we're trying to fix. Even me as a man, right? Like I have to be comfortable being uncomfortable with giving up my privilege and platform at times, so we can make sure that the women in the organization, you know, which are all black women, can have that space and feel safe and have their own voice and me not just speaking for them. And I really think it's two things that I think works well for us is just persistent. Like we're very persistent. You know, we're always bugging, you know, whether it's the police chief or the mayor or city council, we're bugging them. And I just think that works because if you just do something this one time again, you know, like these rallies and protests, you know, we do that for a week and then we get tired and then it's like kind of done until the next incident or the next tragedy happens and then we are again. But when you stay focused and when you stay persistent on the outcomes that you want to see and the changes that you want to see, people tend to lean in a little bit more. And then I think a big thing that a lot of people in the movement don't talk about is winning. Like you have to win. Like, you know, so for us, the big thing was the Austin Police Union contract. A lot of people told us we wasn't gonna win. You know, it was just like this kind of status quo thing that would happen. The union would meet with the city and, you know, they would bargain really nothing, no changes, no oversight, no transparency, no discipline for officers that, you know, have broken the community trust. But I didn't buy into that narrative. You know, for 18 months, I went on like this crusade in every sector and section of the city, talking to people about how this police union contract affects all of us, right? If the police union in 2017 was asking for like literally $82.5 million, like what is the community getting from that? And you know, the answer at the time was nothing. Like the union literally wanted this huge increase in payment.
One of the most important things in building a movement is actually winning. People don't realize that. If you don't win, then you haven't created systemic change. Mm-hmm. So tell me, what's one win that you are most proud of?
December 13th, 2017. That is when we successfully, I don't want to say defeated, but we did. You know, we beat the union. We successfully advocated for changes in transparency of information when it comes to misconduct in police officer involved incidents. We have a new independent, the first independent oversight agency in the state of Texas. And also I think really one of the biggest things is that we completely changed the way that people are able to file complaints or praise for officers in Austin. Prior to the contract that we got in November of 2018, you literally had to go down to the police station, put your hand on a stack of Bibles, sign a sworn affidavit if you wanted to file a complaint. Now with all of the gains that we got in the police union contract, you can file online anonymous complaints and they come in various languages, you know, to make sure those barriers are not there. And you know, that was a really big win for the city, for the community, and I would even say for the police department, even though they may not have felt like that at the time. Because police union contracts are, again, it's this weird space where, and I'm not knocking the marches and the rallies, but everything that people were marching and rallying for around police brutality and police oversight and transparency, a lot of that stuff is tied up in police union contracts, right? So once we find that out, we just literally laser focus all of our attention and efforts on that because we knew that was the way we could get the change that people wanted. And you know, 18 months later, after you know a 9-hour special meeting in December 2017, November 18, we have one of the most, probably the best police union contract in the nation. So.
I think that's fabulous. And for you fire starters, if we look back at all the moments that you've taught us today to help build a movement, you've talked about building relationships. Mm-hmm. You called it bugging, but truly it's building relationships. And when I called him yesterday to confirm, he's hanging out with the police chief of Houston. Truly, you have earned his respect.
That's one of my street creds.
And he knows that you are someone that that is a leader in this space. You also talked about, you know, how working the streets or having people that are creating the momentum through rallies and signs and having their voices heard are part of the policy continuum. They're needed. We have to let policymakers know that people are watching and that people care and that they want change. And then you've talked about how you create that change through policy, which is, you know, one of the latter parts of the movement. By truly, you know, getting to the black and white of paper and making sure that the things that the people want are enacted through policy. And one thing that we haven't talked about, and I want this to be our last question, is about the implementation. So you had this huge win in December, but then you actually had to get someone in the police oversight office, get that right hire, get the money, get that office working to create the change. And even now that the change is there and that person's in that office, you still have to watch the work that you've done through the implementation and all throughout the continuum.
Absolutely.
So tell us about what it took to get someone in that office, to get that office up and running, and how you're monitoring it now.
Well, you know, again, and I think you said it best, it's just a relationship, right? Farrah Muskinen, who is our Office of Police Oversight Director, is just the epitome of black girl magic, right? She's just this awesome aura of being. And to have that relationship with her before she was even officially given the job just speaks volumes to the relationship that we have and the work that's being done in that office. And, you know, you have to have the right people. Like, you can have the perfect system, but if you don't have the right people within these systems, then it's just gonna, you know, it'll just default and it'll go back to status quo. So advocating for the right person, having a relationship with that person, and also having, you know, the metrics, you know, Farrah's been in there a couple months now. I know she's working on reports and metrics so she can report back to the community and give that to us so we can break it down to see what is really working, what needs to be tweaked, and what needs to be added, if anything. So again, you know, for me, I just think it's having relationships with the people in these positions so you can make sure that everything is you know, good to go. So.
It's awesome. Yeah, so in that implementation stage, you know, you made sure you had a leader who was a fire starter, someone who knew the community and didn't mind doing the work, because you really have to have people that can do the work. But now you're monitoring it, giving her the support she needs to make sure that that change is followed through. Well, thank you so much. We've learned so much from you today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and y'all keep an eye out for Chas. He is speaking all over the country and is sharing some important information. You're so humble, I love it. But shares important information all the time. I learned so much from even just your social media feed. So we have talked about policy, philanthropy, and movement building. So thank you for being along on this journey. And I hope to see you again on Movement Maker TV so we can build movements together.